For those who don't know me, I'm John Galvin, the Managing Director of the Clare Chsmpion, and I'd like to welcome you here tonight. It's been 20 years since we had a function like this when we celebrated our centenary in 1903, and some of you were there. Of course, we've seen an awful lot of changes since then, and personally, the worst change has been the loss of both my parents, Gemma and Flann, and I would give anything I had to have them here tonight. Sorry. I think they are here in spirit though, and the Galvin family is well represented by my wife Shelley, my older brother Anthony, and his daughter, my niece Caitlin. So we have the second generation here, which is wonderful. But it's not the only change. There's been seismic changes in the newspaper industry in Ireland. We've gone the way of the UK. Unfortunately, the vast majority of local newspapers are now in group ownership, and that has led to shared content and a general dumbing down, unfortunately. And as one of the last family-owned newspapers, that's something we absolutely are not interested in. We're not going to dumb down. I'm proud to say that the Galvin family, my family, have been involved in the story of the Clare Chsmpion from the very start. Tom Galvin established the Clare Chsmpion in 1903, and it was established to fight for the rights of tenant farmers after the Clareman, which he edited since 1896, was closed by a libel action. And he continued to be a thorn in the side of the establishment until his death later that same year. His sister Josephine, with her husband Sarsfield, continued his work, and they even suffered the newspaper closing for 6 months at the behest of the British Army, because they refused to give guarantees that they wouldn't write seditious articles. On Sarsfield's death in 1937, the Chsmpion was taken over by Josephine and Tom's sister Nellie, who was a decorated nurse in World War I. Nellie famously never talked about the war, but I had the privilege of piecing together her story after visiting the National Archives in Kew. I got Nellie's war record, and it was absolutely exemplary. And she was one of a handful of Irish women awarded the military medal for refusing to leave her post even as her hospital was bombed all night. By all accounts, she was a formidable, pioneering businesswoman, and she ran a tight ship for over 30 years until her death in 1967. Then it was the turn of the next generation, with Nellie's nephew, my father Flann. He took over during sometimes very turbulent times with high inflation rates during the 1980s especially. He managed to move away from the old-fashioned hot metal to the new litho press, and that involved closing down the old Coster press, which was in Barrack Street, and printing for the first time with contract printing in Galway. But he even found time to build new premises in Barrack Street in 1979, and it's where we still are to this day. And when I joined the Chsmpion in 1990, we had a curious mix of old and new technology. Dad, as a true Clareman, never fully trusted computers. So he left all that to me, and by the time I took over from him on his retirement in 1994, we were well on the way to full on-screen page makeup. Now, we started with Apple Macs, but in the mid-2000s I was delighted to turf the whole lot of them and bring in PCs. And we were one of the first newspapers to do that. And also a few years later we brought in Adobe InDesign, which at the time was never used for newspapers, but it's now the industry standard software across the industry. So I think it comes down to, if you're not innovating and reacting, you're moving backwards, and it's something that we wouldn't want to do. We've gone from a financial crisis in the last few years to a global pandemic and onto a soaring cost of living. And there's also the threats and opportunities of the internet. Now, many people say they can get your news from the internet. I don't believe that for a second. Google aren't in every parish in Clare. Facebook aren't in every parish in Clare, but we are. And it's thanks to you, the local correspondents, that gives us that unique strength. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. As I said, many newspapers have gone down the lowest common denominator road of shared content, and there's no relevance to local readers, and we will never do that. We care, and we continue to care about what we put in our newspapers. And for that, I'm delighted that we have a fantastic team in Barrack Street, and even working from home, who put together a paper every week with care and dedication, and I thank you very sincerely. But I particularly want to pay tribute to Shelley, my wife, who works harder than any of us in all departments. And I'm certainly not forgetting Daisy, who's in charge of who is in charge of staff morale and letting us know when it's time to take a tea break. 20 years ago, I read an extract from Tom Galvin's first editorial, and I think it's only fitting I do that tonight. In 1903, he wrote, "The Chsmpion will stand as the inveterate foe of landlordism, shoningism, grabbers and castle hacks. The wants of the people will be firmly espoused in our columns until their grievances are redressed. We shall agitate for an Irish Ireland and an Irish Parliament to govern and make laws for the Irish people. Should the present land bill not meet the requirements of the tenant farmers, we shall loyally support their cause until justice is done them and until the last vestige of landlordism disappears from the country. A friend of the labourer and the artisan, local affairs and the development of local industries will be looked to, and in fact, in every sense, we hope to make the Chsmpion worthy of the best traditions of the Banner County." Now, I couldn't have said it better myself. And I'll just ask you now to lift your glasses to the Clare Chsmpion at 120 and to the next 120 years. Enjoy the night.